let's talk about the market. Let's talk about what we have to look forward to this coming week in our lovely Monday webinar. And I'm always glad to do this. I'm always glad to have some new faces and new names and some people that I don't know and that I am happy to see with us. So it's always good to do this, and I look forward to it every week. I tried to do the best job that I could this week, narrowing down some of the pairs. As I always spend kind of the, hey Ralph, nice to see you. I always spend the first, I spend some time on Sunday, and then I spend as much time as I can on Monday trying to narrow down all the setups and all the pairs that I'm watching. And it was really hard to narrow it down today. We have a lot of setups and we have a lot of currency pairs to watch, so it's going to be kind of tough to narrow these guys down. But we're going to do the best we can. Remember, there's some news coming out this week, so I want to make sure that everyone is keeping their eyes and ears open because there's stuff coming. But remember, you can get some information at daytradersfx.com, including 5-day free trials to the trading group and all of that by clicking right there. Yeah, that's the name of the game, Mel. Just pick the successful ones, that's for sure. So if you guys remember last week, here's a look at last week. This is what we had for news last week. Basically, most of the news was on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and there was just kind of little bits, and it was just kind of, it was a pretty quiet week, nothing too crazy, nothing too nuts. And then look at the news this week. It's just madness. We have crazy amounts of news this week, including polishing the week off with some non-farm payroll. That'll be exciting. But we just have tons and tons of news this week, including today. We've got some a little bit of New Zealand news left, and then some Chinese news later on, and then going into Tuesday, UK, European, Canadian, US, Chinese, Australian news. It just goes on and on. And that's just Tuesday, polishing the day off with some retail sales for Australia and trade balance for Australia tomorrow with a whole bunch of stuff in the middle. Lots of US news. We have, of course, we have the ECB press conference on Thursday. I mean, I don't know what they're going to say there, but it's going to be wild and crazy, so be ready for that. There's just so much news. And then again, on Friday we have non-farm payroll, which is always just craziness. So be ready. It's going to be quite a busy week of news. So I just wanted to kind of jot down a few pairs that I'm interested in keeping an eye on today. Let's see if we can add a couple of numbers to these guys here. We're looking at it's actually about 7 pairs, because there's 7 or 8 pairs, because we've got some double lines in there. But these are the pairs I'm looking at. I like euro dollar. I think there's great opportunity on euro dollar. I don't see a lot on pound dollar. It's pretty odd for me not to include pound dollar in our weekly chat. I like euro dollar. I like Aussie dollar. I think the Australian dollar is ready for a correction. It's quite overextended on every chart that I can see. So I think the Aussie dollar is going to be a great one. Obviously, if we get some nice correction on euro dollar, that's going to create a great opportunity on dollar Swiss franc. Again, going back to the Aussie pairs, I just think we have a good opportunity for some Aussie strength coming up here. Dollar yen, not one that I talk about too very often, but it's looking fantastic. New Zealand dollars, it's historic levels. So we have kind of a lot of stuff to be looking at. So let's just take a peek here. The euro dollar is kind of a simple one. There's nothing too crazy I'm looking at here, except for just a nice little price pattern that we have in the works, and it seems to it's just holding like crazy. So you can see that we have this little trend line that kind of gave us a little break last night. Not really looking at anything on that just yet, but we're kind of working ourselves into a nice little downward channel and a bit of a falling wedge here. Euro dollar has run down. It's made a pretty swift move, as so many pairs have, into significant support levels. So make no mistake about it, I absolutely see the euro dollar heading into the low 120s. Here we are, just a tiny bit below 12700. I think that probably by the end of the year we could see 120, 12200, maybe even below that. It's gonna be an interesting run. So we'll see how this euro dollar goes. But here's what I'm looking at right here. I'm looking at the fact that, number one, our euro dollar has run down. The 12700 and 12750, those have been pretty important areas, and it's made a pretty big run and kind of just slowed down in those areas. We are below 12700 and 12750, but not by too much, just by a couple of pips, and we're starting to get some things, almost an inverted hammer here on the daily chart, which is definitely a good sign. We have some nice missed pivots up above. 200 moving averages are all looking pretty good. That's just pretty nice there on that euro dollar. We've seen these big crazy movements, right? All this stuff has happened. Summer ended and markets just went nuts. They just went totally crazy. These are movements that we have not seen since 2008 and 2009. We just haven't seen this kind of movement in that long. It's been pretty well across the board that we have seen major breakouts and major runs like this. It's been a good 5 years, if not a little tiny bit more. And so we just haven't seen this in a good while, and I almost forgot if the market was able to do this anymore, and I'm glad to see that it still can. But we've kind of seen this big burst of movement, right? All these pairs, the euro dollar peaked out at 140 a while ago. The euro dollar has kind of been the lesser of the extremes there, but it peaked out about 140 in early May, and it's just been coming down since, 1,300 pips down. And so what I like about this euro dollar is that it's pretty overextended on 1 and 4 hour charts, and it's starting to look like an attractive opportunity to just buy it up into about 12800. So I'm looking for entries around 127.15, 127.20, right around there. Our high actually is 127.15. And so we'd probably want to break that high by just a couple of pips, but I think we've got a pretty decent chance to run up into that 12800 on euro dollar. So it's not a big move, it's not a major move. Ultimately, what I would like to see happen on euro dollar is a run up into 12800, a little consolidation, a little bit of retracement, and then a run up into 12900, 12950, and from there I would probably start shorting the heck out of the euro dollar. If anything above 12900, I'm putting a long-term sell position on euro dollar. That's just what I'm going to do, because that's just what's going to happen. The euro dollar is headed lower than it currently is, but it's moved low enough, I think, for the near term. And so if we can get an entry, above this 127.15, and we have a potential of probably at least 100 pips. At least 80 pips, if not about 200 pips. So I really think we could get the euro dollar back up into the 129 area, but from there we have to be so ready between 12900 and 130 to just start shorting the heck out of the euro dollar and trading it right back down again into the mid 120s. I think we're going to easily see 12500, but I really do think in the long term we could get down into the low 120s. I'm skeptical. I've never really seen the euro too much below 120. I mean, it's been into 118.50 or whatever, and I've seen that before. But in the years that I've been trading, the euro just kind of bottoms out just below 120, and I think that could happen again. 119, 120 kind of area, and then it just finds a reason to turn around. It just finds that reason and it does it. So anyway, long explanation, but let's look for a nice opportunity to buy the break of 127.15 and look for 12900. 12900 is a real possibility. 12800 is our first target. And then above 12900, let's start shorting this thing long term into 12500 area. So that's what I'm looking for on euro dollar, and I think we're going to get a great opportunity for that. Okay, I know I said there's nothing on pound dollar, and I don't think that there is a bunch yet. But just we're just going to keep an eye. The pound dollar it's on the list of lists to be on, kind of a thing. So we don't have too much to say about the pound dollar yet, but I do think there's going to be a nice little opportunity coming up on that one, maybe in a week or so. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Aussie dollar, though, I think we're going to see some lower numbers on Aussie dollar. One thing that we love to look at here is like with euro dollar. Look at my monthly chart. This is my monthly chart on euro dollar. So I remember this high right here. I remember this distinctively, 160 on euro dollar. Everyone thought this is insane, and it's headed into $2. And then of course it dropped thousands of pips. And you just see it kind of keeps peaking out. 150, and then the next peak is high 140s, and then the next peak is 140 on the dot, and it just kind of keeps making lower highs here. But the lows aren't getting too terribly much lower. Our low back here was 123. We did get that one little spike down there, just about 1900, and then here's our low again, 120, just above 120. I mean, it's pretty safe to say we're probably headed back into 120. Potentially. I don't know if I'm going to necessarily be targeting 120 because I think mid 120s will be a safe target. I'm always curious about getting to multi-year extremes, but I think there's something like that coming. And one thing that we want to keep an eye on, if we're looking at this big euro dollar movement, it's behaved itself pretty well with gold as well. So gold, we have this big level on gold, which is about 1180. So just below $1,200. Gold has got some pretty significant support, and it's been pretty questionable on whether that was going to hold or break or whatever. And one thing that I've just been watching, if we just kind of go to these lows here, either one of these lows, and we just go all the way up to this high on gold. You can see that our 50% fib is just below 1100, and I think that's a pretty real possibility of getting hit. And I think if we get to the 50% fib, if we get to 1185, 86, then I think euro dollar will reach 120. So there's my correlation for the day. And likewise, I think there's going to be big effect on the Aussie dollar as well. So Aussie dollar and gold tend to follow each other pretty nicely as well. So the Aussie's made this big dive down, and it's running into some of these pretty significant levels. So like I just did, I looked at euro dollar. We looked at weekly and monthly charts, and we can see kind of where we are in respect to major levels. The Aussie is right in the middle. It's 23 or 400 pips off the top and 2,500 pips off the low of 2008. It's just right in the middle. So again, I think we're going to see Aussie dollar head a good bit lower. I could easily see this Aussie dollar in the long term getting into the mid 70s, 75, 76, and we'll probably see it get there. But it is running into yearly lows right here. Our yearly low is about 86.50. So not too much further below where we currently are. 86.57 actually is the yearly low, and that's the yearly low including that's about a 3-year low for Aussie dollar. So, and it's made a pretty significant move. It's run down 750 pips into a 3-year low. So again, we want to keep an eye on these bigger movements here. So that being the case, I think we're going to have a nice opportunity to trade this falling wedge that is forming oh so nicely on this Aussie dollar here. There we go. And it's just barely a falling wedge, but it still is a falling wedge. And so I'm watching this, and I think we're going to have a nice opportunity to start getting long Aussie dollar. We have very nice little coinciding levels here. This 87.50 looks pretty interesting. Above that, I would consider, getting long for, around 50 to 150 pips. Kind of like the euro dollar. I think if euro dollar makes it up to around 130 or just below 130, we're going to have a fantastic long-term major opportunity to short it down to some of these bigger levels. Because one thing that we're looking at, remember, is a lot of these pairs are, I love the 200 moving average, and that extends to every time frame. So the Aussie dollar here, we have a 200 moving average on the monthly chart all the way down here at about 8,400, and I think that's a great target to aim for. But likewise, we're leaving a pretty massive missed moving average up here on the weekly chart. So anyways, I think we've got some great opportunities there. For the moment, I would like to get long at the break of 87.50. into, targeting 90 level as close as possible, but 8,900 would be a great target, so 150 pips there, and getting as close to the 90 level as possible. And if we get to 90, let's short the heck out of it. So euro dollar, short the heck out of it between 129.00 and 130. Aussie dollar between 89 and 90 is where we want to short it. And there's some pretty great little opportunities to buy these breaks on up. Just weekly highs so far in both of these pairs, and they're not too far away. Now, if the Aussie dollar makes a significant move lower, then I will look for other signals and other breakouts to get in. Right now, it's pretty overextended, so it's a pretty good little setup to start looking for buying opportunities. So, if it heads lower, great. I'll redraw my trend line. If it doesn't and it breaks this 87.50, then we'll buy the heck out of that, and that's looking pretty great. Okay, I don't have too much to say about the dollar CAD. We made some nice pips on the dollar CAD, and it finally made that run higher. We got out about 11100, and it's just slowly creeping higher. It's about 50 pips higher, so nice little move there. Obviously, if this euro dollar starts to correct, dollar Swiss franc gets pretty interesting, and we have a pretty excellent looking chart, 4-hour chart on dollar Swiss franc. Remember, again, we just kind of want to look at where we are in the grand scheme of things. Multi-year highs on dollar Swiss franc, are just below that parity level, 99.50 area right there. That takes us to highs of at least the last 3 or 4 years. So we have a ways to go before getting there. We're not really at any extended levels, but on the overall grand scheme here, this is a monthly chart, and you can see that this dollar Swiss franc has got a lot of room to go. We have just been at some really low levels, and we're a long ways off those highs. So 8,000 pips off the highs of the last many years, and we're only 2,500 pips off the low. So I think the dollar Swiss franc could have some very nice movements up, but it's going to need some corrections in the meantime as well. So that's what we're going to be looking for. We'll be looking for some corrections and some moves down into the lower 90s. We're at 95.10. I'd like to see us get down into 9,300, 9,200, and then buy some dips there as well on dollar Swiss franc. So we'll just be looking for breakouts on this dollar Swiss franc, but I think we're going to have a nice opportunity to get into that one. So again, I think there's going to be great opportunities for some Australian strength, and I think that could be manifest here in the Aussie-New Zealand pair as well. Aussie-New Zealand, again, if we're looking at just big charts and kind of where everything's going, the Aussie-New Zealand has just come off of, it's just double bottomed off of 10, 12-year lows, really kind of all-time lows. We did have a little spike down here a few pips further in 1996, but this is the money level right here for Aussie New Zealand to hold, and that's right about the 10500 area. And so it's, again, we are 700-800 pips off that low, and we are 2,500 pips from these big highs here. So there's a very clear range that Aussie New Zealand is trading in. And I like this a lot. So we've got some great targets. We're just coming off those lows. We're absolutely looking for any opportunity to get long and stay long Aussie New Zealand. And one of our opportunities will probably be a bit of a short-term trade, which is just a simple bull flag right here. The bull flag on this Aussie New Zealand is about it's just shy of 200 pips. And if this holds as our low, which is about 1,200, then we can expect about 1,400 as a profit target. So from current market price, there's some pretty decent potential for this Aussie New Zealand to head higher. So let's look for this little 1-hour bull flag. This will probably be a 100 pip move, but this is a great setup, great trade. And we have lots of Australian news coming, so we've got to keep an eye on that. But this is an excellent setup. So I like that one. Okay, quickly on to the dollar yen. Dollar yen has run to death. Dollar yen is starting to top out at it's slowing down at least a little tiny bit on the smaller time frames. We can see that kind of consolidation of the last couple of weeks, and here we are at just about the highs of 110.50 is that little spike up in 2008. And so the dollar yen from current market price is off that low by 3,400 pips, and we're only off that high by about 1,500 pips. So we're in the upper kind of third, upper 30+% of this dollar yen movement. And so you know, again, these are good areas to start looking for little corrections. I've mentioned a couple of times above 10900, I think we're hitting 110 for sure. From 110, I think we're going to have some nice opportunities to short dollar yen. So what I'm looking for here is we have a nice rising wedge you can see on this 4-hour chart, 1-hour chart, 4-hour chart setup. I would like to get short dollar yen, you know, depending somewhere around 10900, 10915, you know, in between that area I think would be a great spot to get short dollar yen. So that's what I'll be looking for there, and kind of how I'll be trading that. So you know, we'll see if it gets up to 110. If it makes a, you know, one more strong push into 110, great. We'll take it. We'll you know, we'll see what happens there. But from 110, we're almost definitely going to be looking for an opportunity to short down into 10900, 10800. You know, those areas there. So be ready on that dollar yen. New Zealand dollar. I actually love the New Zealand dollar. Now, I think New Zealand has had some weakness. They've definitely shown some weakness. But one great thing that New Zealand has done is they have made some pretty intense runs. About 1,000 or 1,100 pip run down into last year's lows, about 7,700, and we're seeing a pretty nice, a pretty nice little bounce there. Now we still have, you know, again coming back to these big moving averages and so on, we still have a 200 moving average way down here. I could see the dollar, the New Zealand dollar, heading a lot lower. But again, after some corrections, we got to have some corrections, and this has just run a pretty significant amount for the New Zealand dollar. It took the entire year to get to that high, and it took an entire, you know, 2 months to get to that low, or to erase all of that high and then run almost that exact same distance further. So New Zealand dollar is very, very overextended, and it's hit some very significant support. So I think we're going to have some nice opportunities to trade this New Zealand dollar back up to the 80 level. I'm looking for 80 to get hit. I think there's a really good chance of that happening, and then from there we'll probably short the New Zealand dollar from 80 down to, you know, down to at least again down to 7,700, and probably through 7,700 at that point. But we're going to need to see some retracement. I don't know how much further this New Zealand dollar is going to go before it just totally runs out of steam. So let's kind of watch for double bottoms and consolidations around this 7,700. Then we'll be looking for opportunities to buy off of 7,700 and see if we can get a nice run up into 80 on this New Zealand dollar. I really like this setup. I think it's a great setup. Okay, so as to not drag on forever and ever and ever, two more quick pairs that I like. Again, I think we're going to see some Australian strength coming up sooner than later. I like the Aussie Swiss franc. I think there's a nice opportunity. Aussie Swiss franc is coming off some, you know, getting down into some multi-month lows here. It's taken a pretty nice little run. And so I'm just going to look for this falling wedge to break, and then we'll be looking to get long Aussie Swiss franc, and kind of the same thing with the Aussie CAD. I like this Aussie CAD. It's made a nice, big, significant run down, and I think that this one is fairly, it's getting fairly overextended on the 1 hour and 4 hour charts, and you can see that we're creating a pretty nice little falling wedge situation here as well. So I like this Aussie CAD quite a bit. I don't know when it's going to give us that setup. It could be in a couple of days. It could be, you know, further down the road, but it's a good looking setup, and I think we're going to have some nice trades there. Again, I didn't want to carry on forever. I love Euro Pound. Pound Swiss franc's probably going to give us an entry. I love Pound Aussie. We'll talk more about that. There's kind of a lot in here, but I wanted to at least cover those 7 or 8 pairs that I'm looking at. Hopefully you guys will watch and rewatch this recording, because there's going to be a lot of these on our watch list of pairs to trade this week. So These are setups I'm looking for this week / this month. One more thing to remember is today's the 29th, so we're getting down to the last days of the month. And remember, we have some pretty extended pairs. So today and tomorrow, we only have 30 days to September. So today and tomorrow are the last 2 trading days, and we could see a lot of volatility going into Tuesday before we get to the first day of the month on Wednesday. And that could really help us with some of our reversals that we're looking for, some pullbacks on some of these dollar pairs. So at this point, I'm just waiting for the dollar to take a breath and give us an opportunity to buy some euros and buy some Aussies and some of that stuff. But we're definitely on the train for the long-term dollar trend that I think is well underway. So that's it. Questions, comments, give them to me.